everybody, thank you all so much for joining us today. On the Zoom chat with us is a personal friend of mine, Kate Lenzer from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Kate and I, several years ago, were graduate students at the University of New Mexico together in the geography program. And Kate has done just a whole variety of really, really cool projects, working for groups like the Trust for Public Land, the work she does now with Geo5Design, which until very, very recently was called Unique Places. But she's done projects for the United Nations, local and state government projects. She's a gifted cartographer. When we were in a cartography class together, Kate was the first person I would go to ask her to critique my maps before I would turn them in, because she always does excellent, excellent work. She's taught GIS classes at UNM. Anyway, just done so many cool things. So I thought this is an awesome person to bring in and share a little bit about the background that she has. So Kate, let's start with a little bit about grad school, because our guest last week had not been to grad school and you have. So yes. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to pursue a master's degree in geography in general? And then, if I remember right, you're from Ohio. So how in the world did you end up in Albuquerque out of that whole process?
The $1,000,000 question, right? So I guess I'll give you kind of a broad background because it'll all lead up to me going to grad school. So I went to undergraduate school at Ohio University, which is in Athens, Ohio. And I went for Spanish and Latin American studies, actually. And so I thought I wanted to like enter foreign service, work for the State Department, FBI, something like that. Ultimately, that did not end up happening. And so I couldn't find a job, really. I decided not to do that. There were not a lot of jobs in Ohio doing Latin American studies, surprisingly. So I actually moved back with my parents for a little while, and then decided that I just needed a change. Like I needed something big to happen in order for me to like kind of propel my life forward. So I ended up moving to Albuquerque, which is honestly, it was kind of a whim. I just picked a place and I ended up there, not really giving it a ton of thought, to be honest with you. So when I got to Albuquerque, I was just like working at Target. I mean, I was making enough to get by in terms of money. But I was like, ultimately I don't want to work retail for the rest of my life, which is a fine profession, but it just wasn't for me. So I decided that I was going to go back to school. I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do at the time, but I kind of thought back about my time at an undergrad at Ohio University, and I did get a minor in geography. And I always liked geography. Like it's really cool, like all the maps, like the spatial analysis, human geography, all those different components, because geography is like so many different things, right? So I decided that let me give it a shot. Let me go meet with the geography department. Maybe there's something there for me. Because I had actually also considered like maybe I'll get a PhD, like go through further with like Spanish and Latin American studies. Talked to the people at that department, wasn't really thrilled about it. So then kind of just like thought about like what do I want to do, and geography did become more of a clear picture for me. So about the GIS, I like didn't know a lot about GIS. Back when I was in undergraduate school, again, I'm just trying to tie it all together, but I actually entered a GIS class and it was like a beginner's GIS class. When I got it, the professor is like, by the time we're done with the class, you're going to have like a published paper in GIS. And it was like really advanced. And I was like, okay, this is weird. So I dropped the class. And so it kind of felt like a little bit of a redemption. I actually went back before I actually signed up for the master's program, took a GIS class. And I was like, I'm going to get you this time, GIS. And so I took the class and I really loved it. And I was like, no, this is what I want to do. So for me, that obvious next step, because I didn't have an undergraduate degree in GIS, that obvious next step for me was to do graduate school. So that's kind of how I ended up starting grad school anyway.
So I was anticipating you to tell us this story about how you like researched all these programs and you reached out to faculty.
No, I really didn't. And I'm not saying that that's the way you should do it, my way, because it's probably not the best way to do it. Yeah, I mean, I was really, like, I found myself in Albuquerque, and then realized that I wanted to pursue geography. And, the University of New Mexico was pretty much my choice. And so instead of, doing a ton of research, I kind of just like jumped head in. yeah, and started. So it wasn't, unfortunately, well, fortunately, I don't know, things are working out fine. But yeah, it wasn't a terribly thought out process. But again, do as I say and not as I do. I think you should research grad programs if you decide that you want to go that route. Because I did end up with a bunch of student loan debt, right? So it's like, make sure that what you're doing in terms of grad school, like, is actually going to be good for you. It's moving you in the right direction for your life, definitely.
I love that because I also moved to Albuquerque on a whim, decided I wanted a graduate degree in GIS, and bumbled my way into UNM. Oh well.
See?
Yeah, and here we are. Here we are.
What does
Okay.
that say about the department? But yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
We're both successful, so it worked out.
Yeah. Okay. So, in terms of the career that you have now, so you work for Geo5 Design. Previously, that was Unique Places. But then prior to that, you actually worked for the, if I remember right, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation.
I did, yeah. So um, I can just talk a little bit after grad school, like how I made a transition into working. So I graduated with my master's degree, and then right at that time, I was still fortunate. I was working on an NSF grant one of our professors had, and so he kept me on. I don't know how long it was, maybe 6, 8 months, something like that, maybe less than that. But I came on as, like, having a master's degree, came on as like a research scientist, and continued working on that grant. So that was really great. However, that money eventually did dry up, and so I'm like, okay, now I have to go find a real job out there in the world as a GIS professional. So I did not have much luck, honestly, right away finding GIS work, and so I was unemployed for a little bit, and then I applied for a job at what is called the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Center for Health Policy at the University of New Mexico. And it really didn't have anything to do with GIS. I was I think a research coordinator was my title. And so I worked with professors, like helping them organize their research, help them apply for grants. It was it was still in academia. It was super interesting. I worked with great people, but ultimately it was not GIS. So I think, the benefit, like reflecting back on it now, the benefit is that it was a professional position. I did gain a lot of skills like project management, program management that I can apply to anything that I do down the line. So I think, like, just having that ability of, like, proving I'm able to organize myself and perform and, meet deadlines, things like that was really valuable. So I think I worked there for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. And I was like, yeah, I've got to do GIS. It's kind of like a use it or lose it. I didn't look at ArcMap that much during that time. And I remember opening it up for the first time. I used to know the software really well at the time. I think it was like version 9 or something. And so like, there was a software change in there, upgrading. And so just knowing where all the buttons were, it was really difficult at first to pick it back up, actually. But so I was like, I knew I wanted to do a GIS job. I applied for a job at the city of Albuquerque in the planning department, and that job was, I don't remember the title, but it was just doing some really basic GIS stuff, like a general entry-level job. And I thought, like, this is great. I'm definitely going to take this. And then when I found out what their salary was that they were going to offer me, actually, I did not take the job. Honestly, it felt insulting how much they were going to offer me for having a master's degree. And at the time, I was just like, again, looking back, should I have taken the job? Like, probably would have been a good idea. But I didn't. I just made that decision. It sounded boring, honestly, the job, and it didn't have, I think one thing for me is, like, I need room to grow. Like, I can't just do the same thing day in, day out. I'll get super bored. And then I'll find myself trying to get another master's degree in something else, right? So that job was going to be, like, really repetitive. I think it was going to be like editing parcels or editing building footprints. I don't know, just like something like that. So anyway, I didn't take it. I decided not to. I went back. I never quit, but I just stayed working in my non-GIS research management job. And then eventually, I actually was taking martial arts class with who is the guy who is now my boss, and he found out that I did GIS. And so over time, he and I just talking, and he decided that he wanted to grow his company or the company's GIS capabilities a little bit more. And asked me if I wanted to come on as kind of their GIS person So that's how I ended up at the job that I have now. Yeah, which was like a great coincidence that I happened to meet that guy. That's why I always say like networking and just like talking about yourself and what you do is so important, because you don't know where you're going to find the job. Like I found that job in a completely untraditional manner. You know, we sat down at a coffee shop, had an interview, decided that we were going to give it a shot, and then, you know, we went from there. And it was like, not to talk about money or salary, but he wasn't offering me a ton of money. But the difference in that job is that it was like exciting. I'm like, we're doing stuff with the environment. My day-to-day is going to be different. There's a ton of room for growth. And so, you know, even though it was less money, it was like, yes, like I can see myself like going down this career path, that ultimately, you know, several years later, I'm still doing it. I'm so glad I did, you know, end up taking that job.
Nice. So let me pause for a minute. We've got a lot of folks who I think grad school may be in their future.
Mhm.
So does anyone want to hop on real quick, unmute yourself, and ask Kate any questions related to grad school and or making that transition from grad school into the workforce?
Sure. So I have a question about the transition from undergrad to grad school.
Okay.
Um, and I guess a simple question would be like, what was the most distinct difference from undergrad to grad school that you noticed?
Mhm. I think for me, the big difference, there was a lot more reading in grad school and a lot more like critical thinking. It's like more of a opportunity of thought and less a read this textbook, memorize it, and perform on a test. It was very much like read this paper and let's discuss it. What do you think about it? What are you pulling out of it? So it's more like critical thinking. And also I think people accepting you a little bit more as a student and like being like, you've made this jump, you've shown that you want to continue on. And so people just understanding that you have your own thoughts and you're welcome to bring them to the table. It's also a little bit more, I think, self-directed. If you do a thesis, that's your choosing, right? Nobody's telling you what to do. So you're just kind of like relying on yourself to make that decision. And again, like your professors will trust you and they'll guide you, of course. So yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest thing, like more independence, more critical thought, more freedom, to be honest with you. Again, it's not just like rote memory. It's more about thinking and how you're going to apply this to your life and your job, etc.
Good question, Nick. Thank you. And Kate, did you have funding for grad school?
I had some funding. I mean, I still ended up with a bunch of loans, so I know everything wasn't covered. But I think I had a good chunk of my tuition covered. Um, and then I worked as, trying to remember how all this worked, but I worked as a research assistant and a teaching assistant. So I think I got small stipends from that as well. Um, yeah. So I mean, like, I don't think my books were covered. I mean, definitely like not housing or anything like that was covered, but I think I had at least half of my tuition, I believe, was covered through a grant that I got.
And if I remember right, your main area of focus wasn't really GIS in particular, though, right?
No. Yes and yes and no. Oh my gosh. So this is the story of Kate. Like, I'm always interested in like a lot of different things, and I'm kind of like, it's not that I can't focus. I am a very focused person. When I put my mind to something, I'll get it done. But I have a lot of different interests. So yeah, so the geography department kind of had two tracks, like an environment track and a GIS track. My coursework and my final diploma, whatever transcript says that I do have a GIS concentration. So I did the GIS coursework to get that. However, my thesis was actually in the local food environment. Like, I was super interested in local food. And so my thesis actually had less GIS. So it was kind of like my actual concentration and then what I ended up doing for my research project didn't really mesh. But again, that's like me. I'm like, I am super interested in food and like how that ties into place. And then also GIS. So yeah. But it's kind of like, nobody stopped me. Nobody was like, hey, you can't do that. So, I mean, I passed my thesis, like no problem with honors, everything. And, you know, I think what do I want to say? Like, I think there is some benefit still to having that well-rounded education for me, because I do use it on a day-to-day basis. It's not just I need to know GIS. It's like really helpful to know some biology, to know environmental science, to know conservation, you know, as I apply the GIS, or else, you know, just clicking buttons all day doesn't help. It's like having that knowledge that surrounds it for me, is really valuable, I find, in my work.
Yeah, I think your ability to tie the human and the physical geography, the knowledge you have there, and then use the geospatial tools to answer those questions and help solve those problems. I think that's, to me, what makes what you do sound the most fascinating, is that application.
Yeah, I agree. And I think back about the job that I applied for, that I got offered and then didn't take in the planning department. I think that was one of my issues, that it didn't tie those things together, and it was just doing like GIS, like purely, without thinking about a lot of the interactions with our actual physical world. So yeah, so that's, I agree. Like what I do now, being able to connect all those things is really super ideal. Definitely.
So in terms of the master's degree, we're going to go a couple more here before we switch topics.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. Yeah.
So what was kind of the most satisfying part of working through and completing that master's degree?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. It's a lot of work, definitely. And I know for me, it pushed me outside of my comfort zone to, like, I'm not a fast reader, for example, right? It's a really weird thing to admit, but I am a slow reader. And the amount of reading that I had to do in grad school, both articles and books, like it really pushed me to my limits. Like I actually like thinned out my eyebrows because I'd read and like it would stress me out, right? So I think just like working through that honestly helped me to grow as a person. And so when I see it at the end of it and be like, I just did a lot of work and a lot of it is, independent thought, and I did it well, like that is very rewarding to be able to say, that I went through that process and did it well and learned all these things along the way. I met a lot of great people too. I mean, people who obviously, Mike, I mean, we still talk to this day. And my other grad school friends, I don't think any of them are in Albuquerque anymore, but it's, people that I still talk to, and professors that if I need a recommendation, I would still go back and ask them. The connections that I made, like every once in a while we'll have a need for an intern at our company. And so the first place I go is back to the University of New Mexico, because I want to be able to like give back, and thank them for everything, and just kind of like hopefully be able to help those students along as well. So anyway, so my point is just like the connections I made through that process are also, really important, really valuable to me.
So one of the things I'm working on with the MBA is I've been doing some what are called depth interviews with some of our undergrads. And the idea is to find out, what's really motivating them, and then how we are as a department meeting those needs. And one of the things that has come up in every student that I've talked to is building confidence.
Mm-hmm.
For you, how did or didn't the earning the master's degree impact your self-confidence and your abilities?
Mm-hmm. It definitely increased my confidence. I would say that my confidence as a GIS professional didn't form until maybe 6 months ago, right? Like it's a process, but I think for a while, no matter what job you're in, you kind of feel like you don't know everything, or like, oh, can I do this? I don't know. But I think at some point, relatively recently, I see some of the other stuff that GIS people do, or people who think they know GIS, and I'm like, that's wrong. That's not how you do it, right? So then I realized that I know, like, actually, I do know what I'm doing. So in terms of a GIS professional, when I left grad school, I didn't feel necessarily very confident. I did feel more confident as a person, just being able to go out there and take on challenges that maybe previously I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do. Grad school did give me that ability to be like, no, like just break it apart into smaller pieces. You've got this, like you've done this whole program. It was hard. So, you can do whatever kind of comes your way.
Nice. All right, so let me do a quick pause. I'm going to switch gears away from grad school conversation. So if anybody else has something they want to ask grad school related, go ahead and hop in.
Okay, I guess.
Oh, you want to say?
Okay. Overall, do you think it would have been worth it to go to grad school if you had the GIS experience in undergrad?
That's a good question. So the easy answer, or I guess the answer where it would be easy, is if my employer paid for it. Then it would be like kind of a no-brainer, because they're offering you this advanced degree. Even if your job wouldn't immediately offer need it, you know, somewhere down the line maybe it would be helpful. So if somebody's offering to pay for it, I say yeah, go for it. In terms of, do I feel like you need it? Not necessarily, unless you feel like you're going to go get a PhD. Then it's like, you know, just go get the master's degree and kind of get on your way. Don't put it off, right? It only gets harder over time. I think there's nothing wrong if you have a bachelor's degree and undergraduate degree, like go feeling out the job market and like look at job descriptions of jobs that you could apply to now, look at job descriptions of jobs you hope to get one day, and then see if, you know, a master's degree is strongly required or if it's recommended. And that'll kind of give you a sense like the career path that you think you want to go on, and if it would be needed in that or not. And I think, and it's kind of hard for me to answer for sure, because obviously I didn't try to get a GIS job without the master's degree, but, you know, thinking about it, look at the jobs that you want and see if it's something that would be required. I wouldn't just do it because, like, I think you should have a solid reason or a ton of money and the time to burn before you just like jump in thinking it's going to help you right off the bat, because I don't know that that's entirely true.
Thanks.
And Maya, I think you had a question too?
Yeah, I had a question. So you mentioned like a little bit earlier that you were considering getting a PhD and you decided to do the master's and then join the workforce. And I was wondering, like, what was your thought process behind those things, and like what pushed you to just like, you know, do a job instead of going for your PhD?
Yeah, I think I was kind of burned out, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think I got a little bit disillusioned by academia, just like some of the political side of that exists everywhere. And I was just like, oh, do I want to play that game or not? I still, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get my PhD someday. And I know, like, obviously it's like, you know, maybe I'll do it when I'm 50, maybe I'll do it when I'm 60. I don't know. Maybe I'll never do it at all. But so for me, I think it was just, I was kind of tired of being in school, and I just wanted to just like kind of do the 9-to-5 thing, which I don't know, it just felt like I wanted that difference, go out and like actually make some money, hopefully, you know, I guess just kind of like live that life for a little while. And so I think the danger is that as soon as I left that environment, now it's hard for me to go back and say, oh, I'm going to get my PhD, because now I'm like, well, I'd have to take my GRE again. I'd have to go get these recommendations. Like, I feel like being in school and being a student is like it's a great skill, like writing papers, for example. But as soon as you go to the workforce and you're not doing that day to day, it's really difficult to like build those skills back up. Yeah, so for me, I just like was tired of going to school. I wanted something different. Yeah, and again, like, it's still in the back of my mind. I still think that I could do it, I should do it, but I would need to have a reason to do it at this point, and have funding to do it as well.
Thank you so much.
And I have a quick one. And I feel like there's no right answer to this, and no one even has an answer to this, so it's going to be hard. I'm so sorry. But you mentioned that during your master's, one of the best parts was the connections that you were able to make. And I know, like, right now, like, next semester, of course, UT will be back in the fall, but other schools may not be, and it may be online or virtual learning environments. So can you, off the top of your head, think of any ways to, like, collaborate with people or make those connections in a more virtual environment?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know. So one of the great places to network are like professional organizations. I know that we had a meeting scheduled in April and it got canceled, and I don't know, you know, if it's going to be rescheduled. So I guess my number one thing is like, see what things are going to be rescheduled and then go to them, and definitely don't miss them, because who knows if it's going to get canceled again. Some of the like the Esri user conference, I know they went to a virtual platform, and there might be even networking opportunities at that event. So I would say also look for events that are going online and see if there are networking opportunities there. The other thing that's kind of, it's a shot in the dark, but I know Mike had mentioned me to, I don't know, either a past or a current student, and she just emailed me and asked me some questions, and she doesn't know me. She just came on a recommendation from Mike. And so just the fact that she emailed me was like super nice, asked some questions. I was able to respond. Like even that just like little connection, like I don't have a job that I can offer her now, but I know who she is, and you know, just kind of like open that channel. So again, it's like kind of a stab in the dark, but if you see somebody out there in the world who you really admire, you think their work is super cool, like just email them and tell them who you are. And you know, if you have some questions or if you can get a phone call with them, I mean, I think that's really valuable as well. It's kind of like scary to do. You don't know how people are going to react, but it's kind of just, you know, throw yourself out there and nothing bad can happen. So it's always a good try or good shot.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I'm just mesmerized by the fact that people who are top of their industry, top of their discipline, I reach out to them on social media all the time. And like every time they reply to anything that I ask them, I just can't believe that they actually do that. Like Ken Field, John Nelson, Edie Punt, the folks that ran the cartography MOOC, they have helped me out with so much material and guidance. And yeah, same thing. I just reach out and hope that they're going to reply and not laugh at whatever I've just asked. And they've been really supportive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people are super busy, so it might take some time. But I feel like GIS in general, GIS professionals, are like a pretty friendly group of people. And so I've never had a bad interaction, honestly, with any GIS or cartography person in my career. So it's always positive.
So you mentioned professional organizations. So tell us a little bit about NMGIC, why you're part of NMGIC, what NMGIC is, and what you do with NMGIC.
Sure. So NMGIC is the New Mexico Geographic Information Council. And we generally just provide support for geospatial things in New Mexico as a professional organization. So twice a year we have a conference that we put on, and we invite vendors to come and do some like booths out in the back, and then we have people come and give talks at each of the meetings to just generally like bolster support of the geospatial community throughout New Mexico, as well as give people the opportunity to share some of the really cool work that they're doing. And I'm a member of the board of directors of that organization, and I really like being on the board. Yeah, go ahead.
So why did you decide to go from being a member to a leadership role?
Yeah, I thought, why not? So, you know, honestly, it's a number of reasons. First of all, so I have my GISP, the GIS professional designation, and so as part of that, you have to have service requirements. I did already meet my service requirements, but this was just, it kind of got me thinking. I'm like, in what ways am I going to serve the geospatial community? And so when I thought about ways that I could do that, I signed up to be a geo mentor. I signed up as part of the GIS Corps. And then I was like, well, there's NMGIC. I mean, why could I not be on the board? And honestly, I thought it was maybe out of reach, but again, like, why not try? Nothing's bad's going to happen if I don't get voted in. And so I applied to get voted in, put myself on the ballot, if you will. I nominated myself. So you can either do a self-nomination or someone can nominate you. I did a self-nomination. I got on the ballot. Did not get voted in, but I think there were like 2 of us that didn't get voted in. But then like 2 board members left, and so in a few months later, they just emailed me and they're like, hey, we have a couple of board position openings. Like, do you want one of them? I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, that's great. It's exactly what I want anyway. So I think being on the board, it does allow me to just like contribute to the geospatial community, which sometimes can feel really big. But this kind of gives me a pointed way to be able to contribute to my community and to the geospatial professionals that live in New Mexico. So that's why I did it, both for myself and for the GISP and for the community at large.
And were you a member while you were a grad student?
I was a member. Yeah, I think it was free for students. So I'm sure I was a
Yeah.
member. But I think at some point, maybe you got it too, Mike, but I think we got scholarships from that organization, I
Yes.
believe. Yeah. So it's actually one of the, I love supporting students. And so I like that they give a scholarship and it gives students the opportunity to present their research work at a conference. And the conferences, they're like really low key. Half of the people I think are there just to get a day out of work, right? But they're still like super friendly. Everybody's super into GIS. And so it gives like students the ability to like go present their work. Again, like in this low risk environment and kind of like feel out that whole process of being in front of people and how best to communicate to an audience, things like that. So yeah, so it's definitely something we continue to do is support students with scholarships for their research work throughout the year.
All right, so Kate, we've sort of talked just briefly about a couple of these other things, and I'd ask you to stick around until 4:15 Eastern time, which is about 8 minutes. So I want to talk a little bit about the projects you've been involved with Geo5Design, and then I'd like to leave just a couple of minutes also if there's anything being female and in this work. This industry, it's a tech industry. Is there anything about that you would want to talk to the young women who are on this call about as well? So let's just throw that up there for the last 8 minutes and go wherever you want with it.
Okay, that's fine. Is it like 8 minutes and then question, or is it like 8 minutes and then we're done?
Well, that's up to you because you know you're working and we're taking up your work time today.
Yeah, I haven't been super productive today, so it's okay. But I guess maybe I'll tackle the woman question first. So I feel fortunate because I feel like I've had women geospatial professionals around me while we were going to grad school. Our meager class of 3. There were 3 of us in our class, and it was 2 females and a male. So in that case, we had the majority out of 3, right? I feel also fortunate that NIMJIC there's a lot of women that go to those meetings, and I believe our board, if it's not majority female, it's half female. So I think that that's good, and I think we need to keep representing and just making sure that you do like run for boards, things like that. I mean, maybe not immediately, but oh, what are we doing? Okay.
So I was just going to show the board of directors.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're gonna see if I'm wrong. There's 1, 2. There's 4 of us. 5 of us. 1, 2. All right. There's 4 of us. Okay. So there's more dudes, but in my mind, there's more girls. But so I mean, just like put yourself out there, right? Like there's only one way that we continue to make geospatial more female, and that is to be involved, be heard. Obviously, don't let the boys push you around. I mean, that's like just saying, right? I mean, like this is a great. I don't want to get political, right? But, you know, recently finally are like, oh, women have had problems in the past in terms of equal pay, in terms of not like being harassed, things like that. So I think it's a really wonderful time for our voices to be heard. And in the geospatial community, I feel like women are, we are supported in that we have each other. And so definitely like as you're getting jobs or like becoming more involved in the community, like always seek out women so that you can have them to mentor you, and just like I said, like seek out those opportunities to be a leader in whatever way you can. I mean, in a few years, you guys are going to be in my position. So it's important just to like keep that momentum going and make sure that you're giving back to students and to younger professionals so that we can, you know, ensure that women are represented as time goes on more and more. Let's see here. You want to talk about projects then?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what you've done, because part of this is I've been like talking you up, saying like she's worked for the UN and Trust for Public Land, and so yeah, let's hear about these cool things you've done.
Right. Gosh, that is like such an open question, and it's so hard to talk to. So, yeah. So one of the big things is the Trust for Public Land. So we did a lot of work for them. I think Mike had a link up there earlier. So this was. This is the power of networking too. So my boss became friends with the woman who eventually ran the GIS shop for Trust for Public Land. she's like, hey, we need some extra GIS help. And then so we were able to fill in that need. So we've done a lot of different planning analysis, essentially conservation or park planning analysis for the Trust for Public Land. And those projects are really interesting because they're very community driven, in that we'll have community meetings to help us determine like what are the criteria we should use to figure out what should be conserved across the community. And so for me, again, being like, I like the environment, I like people, I like GIS, it was really interesting because you have like this whole community driven GIS analysis essentially. And in that way, I guess the nice thing to see is that people don't feel like you're doing something without their consideration. Like, it's their community. If you just come in and be like, our analysis said that we're going to start putting a park here, you know, people don't like being told what you're going to do with their neighborhood. But the fact that we were like able to involve a neighborhood or a community in the decision making process and include GIS, like, it was really great. So I did a few projects. I'm trying to think of what I did. So I did one for Bernalillo County, which is where I live. That's where Albuquerque is. We did one for Harris County, Texas, Houston area, and that was really interesting because we did that shortly after the hurricane plowed through, Hurricane Harvey. So we got to do this whole like intersection with what's the word I'm looking for? Resiliency, and like do this whole GIS analysis surrounding resiliency from the hurricane and community resiliency. So that was really interesting as well. I've done some other analysis in Philadelphia, which is kind of more focused on climate, preparing the city for climate. So just understanding sea level rise and heat islands, things like that, just getting the city a little bit more aware of where they can install some green infrastructure in order to try to mitigate some of the climate changes. Did a similar project to that up in Washington. I've done a lot of work in California in the Sierra Nevada region, also doing similar work, because that area is interesting because it's like a checkerboard area. So you have a lot of like private land held inside like Forest Service, for example. And so just kind of unraveling the complexities of the reality of land ownership and where these conservation priorities lie within that whole like complex system of different ownerships. So that's like, I know, just like threw a lot of stuff out there, but that's a lot of the stuff that I've done with TPL. So I think like bottom line is like, again, like really cool because you got to, or I got to like combine GIS with community planning, with some of these environmental issues like climate, hurricanes, things like that. So it's, which has been really cool. So I mean, those jobs are out there. Like if that sounds really cool to you, like make sure that you're looking for that, like looking for organizations who do that sort of work. And then, you know, there's bound to be opportunities, maybe not right this second, but, you know, over time, you'll see more of these opportunities pop up. I think people will realize, hopefully, that, you know, we only have one Earth, and it's like more and more interest in conservation is occurring just because people realize that climate is changing. It is getting warmer. Like, how can we mitigate some of these forces through conservation? Yeah.
So Kurt would like to know, as part of your analysis in these community meetings, are you actually going and traveling to these places? And what's that like?
Yeah, sometimes. What is it like? It's really interesting because I know sometimes, you know, if I'm just here, sometimes the things that I'm struggle with still is that I'll work with somebody in a place that I don't know. And so they start talking about this place, they know it, they live there, they know the ins and outs, they know like Route 2 and, you know, whatever, Clemson Lake and all these things. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So for me, it's a real treat. Like if I actually get to go and see the place that I'm working to conserve or the place that I'm working to analyze, it's like really beneficial because all of a sudden I feel more invested. I know the people that I'm helping. And I know the place, and it makes more sense when we talk about places. I'm like, oh, now I understand the intricacies of that certain place. So yeah, for a few of those projects, I was able to travel. They did ask me to like facilitate some groups, you know, like put people at different tables and facilitate groups and take notes on whiteboards and things like that. So yeah, like that stuff isn't GIS, but for me, like that's exciting because I get to hang out with people and again, just kind of like drive this conversation on land conservation.
Well, it sounds like maybe some of the work you had done before with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation maybe helped prepare you for some of those roles that you took on later.
No, that's absolutely true. Yeah, just I think when I was working at Robert Wood Johnson, just understanding a variety of different people. I worked with a lot of professors from different fields like economics, sociology, I don't know, a variety of fields. And so just like understanding different perspectives and how to talk to people and how to just gain momentum when getting projects done. Yeah, I think that was really valuable.
All right, Kate, it is 4:17 Eastern time. So
Right.
I'm going to quit asking questions. If you want to stick around, we'd love to have you stick around. And I'd like to open it up for everybody else to ask questions if you've got a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer other questions if anybody wants to know anything else.
Sure thing.
I have a question. So you got your undergrad degree in Hispanic Studies and Spanish?
Yeah, like Latin American studies, yeah. Oh, did you freeze?
Did we lose Veronica?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. She's coming back.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Am I
We can hear
back?
you.
Okay. Did you seek out opportunities to like intersect your passion of Hispanic Studies and GIS, or do you get to do that in your current job?
It's interesting because I finally get to do it actually for the United Nations project I'm working on now. It's a little bit of Latin America. So we're working on doing some maps and some analysis, some data gathering in the Caribbean. It's like like kind of the whole like Gulf of Mexico into the Caribbean, top of Brazil kind of area. And so now, yeah, I get to like make maps in Spanish. Like this is the first time that I've been able to do that. So yeah, actually I love that project. It's not necessarily super GIS heavy, but it's interesting because yeah, for once I'm like, oh, I actually understand like these areas a little bit. I understand I can do like Spanish maps. My Spanish is super rusty. I have somebody check on my Spanish, but yeah, I mean, so it is interesting to actually be able to combine those things for the first time. You know, I'd love to be able to do it some more. Honestly, a lot of my work is driven by, you know, what contracts we get. So I don't always get to seek out, you know, that work exactly. But I think the benefit of getting that one project, the United Nations project, is that it sets me up to get others. So it's like always the hardest thing, like even as a student, like the first job is the hardest to get because you walk in and you like, don't know like how the interview process is going to go. You don't have a lot of like professional tangible skills yet. And so you'll find the same thing like if you work for a small company like I do, people don't give you projects until you can actually prove you've done projects. So like us getting started, like it was a really slow start because we're just trying to network and like convince people we can do things. But now that we're getting more and more projects, and for example, that one, we're like, well, now we can make maps in Spanish and we can do things in the Caribbean. Hopefully that will propel us and kind of set us up to do similar work in the future.
Good question, Veronica. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll ask something here. So I think one of the things about the geospatial industry that kind of everybody agrees on that it's like something that's like rapidly changing and fast moving sort of thing, but everybody kind of doing different things. Nobody's really going to agree on exactly what that means or how so. And so based on your experience, could you just give us some thoughts about what you think, how the geospatial technology, where it might be headed, what things might be important in the future, what kind of things do you see from your particular experience that might be something to keep an eye on?
Right. No, that's a good question. So I think it's interesting because the field is really big. I feel like it depends what path you want to talk about, because there's this path that's really big right now with like big data, with cell phone data, location-based Twitter data, things like that. I don't do any of that. So, but I know that's big. And honestly, it's probably going to be faster growing than what I do, which is more I'm not going to say old fashioned, but I do a little bit more like traditional GIS, like suitability analysis, conservation siting, just data creation. I mean, that's just a reality, but it's a little bit more desktop based than, you know, with some of those things that I just mentioned that are definitely more like big data, cloud, AI, more kind of computer science-y. So I do think that the industry in general will continue to see more of that. More, what do I want to, what's the word that I was just thinking of? I can't remember. You're like, just bigger, can't think of the word.
It'll come back about 5 minutes after we get off the
I know, it totally will, yeah. But I'll just call it like big data analysis, right? In terms of the stuff that I do, I definitely see people more going towards online maps. People don't necessarily want to spend the time doing the desktop analysis. They want to just be able to like have it up online. And so there's a lot of services out there that make anybody a GIS person, where they can just go on the internet and they can add some data to a map and boom, they have a map. So I think those things will also continue to grow. Which is a little frustrating, because if people think they can make their own maps, even if they suck, they don't think that they need actual GIS professionals. So, but I feel like that's been going on for a while, and people still come to us for our expertise. So yeah, so that'll keep going on. I would say, I don't know what software you guys use, but I know, do you use ArcGIS Pro or do you do ArcMap Pro? Okay, good. Because I have more and more clients asking me to do work in ArcGIS Pro. So I was going to say, if you don't already know Pro, make sure you know it, because people are definitely going to start moving towards that platform more, as well as time goes on.
I think that's odd that a client would even have a preference on like what you use to get to the results.
So yeah, sometimes they don't, and so they're like, what is that? Sometimes our clients will want the actual results, and they want to like play with them even after we're done. And so in that case, then they'll have a preference. Or like one client I have, we were just making some maps for them in Arc, like in Arc software, and generally like a lot of times we do really nice cartography, so just kind of getting away from GIS and like doing like really nice maps or infographics. And so we'll do that in the Adobe suite of products like Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator. And so, but sometimes our clients request that we make maps for them in ArcGIS or Arc Pro. And so in that case, because we're kind of like handing them a map product that they want to be able to change, then yeah, they might have a preference one way or another which software they want it to be in.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so we just try to be flexible about that. You know, it's, for me, like learning on ArcMap, it's been, you know, just over time I'll dabble in ArcGIS Pro, and there's still things that for me I'll go and do in ArcMap because I can do them quicker. But ArcGIS Pro, like I find like I do a lot of online maps in ArcGIS Online for our clients, and so I find that managing that data in ArcGIS Pro is definitely a lot easier. So yeah, so I know that I've been kind of making that transition more and more.
Can you talk programming for a second? Like, did you learn a language when you were in grad school, and do you code as part of your job now?
I do not code a lot as part of my job now. I will do some Python if there's something that I want to get done, like a repetitive task. I'll do Python for that, but it's generally for my own purpose. I would say that because of our expertise, people are not going to ask us to do their heavy coding. So if it's a really coding heavy project, then they wouldn't choose our company to do it anyway. I know one of the skill sets I wish I had, because we do get asked to do it a lot, is like customized online viewers. So like doing a lot of heavy JavaScript. I don't know any of that. I've tried. It like doesn't hold my interest, or I don't have the time to do it. If, you know, it's like if I'm busy all day, it's hard for me to step away and like actually learn coding at night or something. I'd rather go outside than look at a computer for more time. But yeah, I mean, it's super valuable skills. I think both Python, I think JavaScript, in terms of like the online just web customization, are both really, they're popular out there, and people do require those skill sets. I just do not personally have them.
Thanks, Kelly. And Kurt, we are getting close to 4:30. Is there anything else you want to close us out with today?
Yeah, I had a question. Where were you during the Great Recession, and did that have an impact on your job or in your part of the industry?
What year was that? 2008, right?
2007, 8, 9, yeah.
So I was in grad school. I was in grad school from 9 to 11. So before that, I had almost no money, so it didn't affect me much at all. I worked at Target. Honestly, I still had my job. So yeah, and then I started grad school. But I mean, I wasn't really looking for jobs at that time. But I know it's possible when I got into grad school, I felt sheltered from it because I was just in grad school. When I got out in 2011, I mean, I did have a hard time finding a job, so that, you know, maybe the economy was still like kind of making its way up. But I didn't personally feel, honestly, the effects of that in terms of my career much at all.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to put a link in here in the chat for you all. And it's about sheltering during a recession by getting a graduate degree. And I'll put it in the link here once I find it. All right, so if nobody else has any other questions, I'm going to let Kate go so that she can, you know, do these cool projects for the UN and TPL and all these other folks.
Yep, totally. Yeah, and I mean, I'll just make the comment. I mean, we're all like at our houses now. So on a day-to-day basis, I actually work from home. So not a ton has changed for me since this whole COVID-19 thing came out and everybody's working at home. But I think, you know, one of the benefits that I'm hoping comes out of this is that people are going to be more willing to let their employees work at home. And if that's the case, then it may open everybody up, you know, including you guys, to having jobs like in, you know, you can be, the company might be in California, but you can sit in Tennessee and work, right? So I'm hoping to see more of those opportunities, because it means that, you know, we're going to be able to see more qualified people getting to the jobs that they should be in. So I guess it's yet to be seen, but that'd be super cool to keep your eye out for.
Kate, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
This has been a great conversation about grad school. I think we got to hit on a lot of really cool topics, and then especially this this transition from being a professional student to be a professional, I think was also a really good conversation to have.
Definitely. Yeah, and I don't know if you're going to share my email, but I'm on the internet. I mean, you can share my email. I'm happy to answer other questions offline. If you guys need something, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I will. I'll put your contact info up there. So we're going to use the Geo5Design email from now on, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Honestly, they all, if you see my name with something after it, it probably still comes to me. So, but yeah, Geo5 is good.
All right, I will put that down here as well, so y'all can get that if you need it. And otherwise, let me put in a plug for next week. So next week, we are going to have a University of Tennessee Knoxville graduate with us, Desiree Kosis. She works in Massachusetts. She's in Boston, and she is in charge of GIS for the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. So like whenever there's the Boston Marathon or anything like that, she's the person who develops the geospatial technology, implements it, and uses that to be making decisions before, during, and after big events like that. So again, I'm playing to my strengths. You know, I'm finding geospatial people that I think do really fascinating things, but I'm trying to give you a variety of different career paths and types. So if you think that something related to emergency management or state or local government is something you'd be interested in, come see us next week as well.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be a totally different perspective than I have. So that's sweet. Good job getting somebody different.
Cool. Thanks, Kate. Have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.